This is your Chargers linebacker, Dan Henley, and you're tuning in with Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LA Football Network. If this is your first time tuning in to the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Good morning, Chargers fans. Bright and early, Sunday morning. Dan is fighting caffeine issues along with a wicked sunburn. We are live, obviously, on a Sunday morning that we want to come to you guys and talk Chargers, because now we're in that time of the offseason where it's the drolls, it's the quiet time, it's the calm before the storm, before training camp kicks in, that we're all waiting for football to finally return. Put a one in the chat if you're excited about preseason. Like, who gives a damn? Like, let's get some football back on the schedule for all of us. Love these live shows. Love getting a chance to talk to you guys, taking your questions. Dan and I are going to go over a number of burning questions that we have going over the Chargers offseason here for the next several weeks as we gear up for training camp. But Dan Wolkenstein, I know you're fighting a little bit this morning, sir. How are you feeling? Aside from the sunburn, how are you feeling?
The coffee, honestly, is feeling like ice going through my veins right now. With this sunburn, I couldn't sleep very well. Here, I'll give a little sneak peek. Look at this thing.
Oh, did you put any suntan lotion on?
It was too late, Jake. It was too late. I didn't realize it until I was too far gone. And you know how sunburns go. Progressively, they just get worse and worse after the damage is done. And by the time I go to the shower, it's as if I'm getting flamed by the sun, which I did. So otherwise, the beach was great. Saw Junior Seau Community Park. Shout out to RIP Junior Seau. I can't believe it's only Sunday. And Chargers have a quick turnaround. I know a lot of people talk about 6 weeks between now and training camp. It's less than 4, I believe. They're coming back, I think, the 13th, I think. Check me on that. But it's quick for rookies. So a lot of burning questions for Chargers fans, and we're going to try to get to some of those. We know how this is. You know how this is. Live shows are our favorites. Give us your questions, and we will go through and put them in here as much as we can. Oh, thank you, Hayden. I'll take Lobster Stein. Wow, that sounds like a great beer, too. Someone needs to make that. Anyways, Jake, how are you? Happy Sunday.
I am fine, sir. I have been on a wicked movie binge over the last 3 or 4 days. I started in the middle of the week doing 80s movies. I went to 80s action, Running Man, Big Trouble in Little China, original Die Hard, obviously. Then I switched it to 80s horror. I went Near Dark, Night of the Creeps, Halloween 4. Then I've transitioned to 90s movies.
Good Lord.
So I did, yeah, I did Die Hard 2. I did Demolition Man.
This was all in 4 hours.
No. This is over a span of like 3 or 4 days. But, you know, I love me some movies, dude.
I know. I know. Favorite of all of them?
Of the ones I watched thus far?
Yeah.
It's Demolition Man, honestly. And I know it's Die Hard, you could probably say, like, depending on what day I'm feeling, honestly, you could probably do like a toss-up between the two of them. Demolition Man is just one that when I grew up with it, I actually went to the theater to see it. I did not go see Die Hard in theater. But when I went to go see it in theaters, and that one was just on repeat. Wesley Snipes is just one of the best villains ever. The whole premise of it was way ahead of its time in terms of what it was talking about with the future and what is related to us now. So I just love every bit of that movie. But Die Hard, ask me on a different day, and I'd probably tell you it's Die Hard.
Yeah, I love Die Hard. Okay, let's get into it, Jake. We already have questions flooded. We know how this goes. $5 donation gets put right up to the top by Matt Waters. Thank you so much, Matt, by the way. First one. Love the show. Always honest and interesting takes. We try to be authentic here, by the way. I have so much confidence in this coaching staff. Who are your surprise cut or keep players? BTFU with 4 lightning bolts. Jake, we kind of touched on this a little bit, I believe it was last week. Surprise cuts or maybe keep. The one that is not a surprise keep is Darius Davis. We heard talk about him possibly being cut. Like, he's not going anywhere, please. But cut. Surprise. What say you?
I guess it would be like on the barometer on what you would consider a surprise. Because Isaiah Spiller to me seems like there's an honest reason that he may be let go, but it's not for the reasons of bad play. It's just from the standpoint that he hasn't gotten the opportunity to play in this system. The other reason I say it is if the Chargers keep 6 wide receivers, which they should, given the logjam that they have at wide receivers, and how many tight ends are you going to keep in terms of when you start going through the final 53-man roster, can you really afford to keep 4 running backs in that circumstance? So it may just be him being the odd man out in that circumstance. So I'm not sure if that's necessarily one of surprise. Same goes for Chris Rump. I don't consider that to be much of a surprise, as much of a hot seat as he is on right now.
What about Donald Parham? JT Woods?
JT Woods, definitely. Again, I wouldn't consider those necessarily surprises, considering that you haven't seen much of their play.
The Isaiah Spiller one would be the most unfortunate because we've seen basically nothing to go one way or the other, to be honest.
No, I agree. It's unfortunate just from the standpoint that he really has not seen the field. And I would love to know the reasons why he did not even get a crack at it over the last 2 years when the Chargers, especially last year, were out of playoff contention. The running game has been horrible over the last couple of years. Why are you not doing something to try to make it better? Obviously, I get it. Offensive line has something to contribute in that as well. But I think that his style of running actually fits perfect for what Greg Roman is going to bring to the system. So it may just be from the standpoint that you may have too many running backs and you have to jettison one of them in favor of a different position.
Lance, hey, from the Philippines, just got from college graduation, saw the scheduled show. Congratulations on the graduation. Shout out to Lance in the Philippines. Jake, burning questions. Here's one. Did you try the Taco Bell fries and cheese, Jake? Aardvark fries.
Yes, if this is in reference to the Aardvark fries, I did. I told Dan this on Friday that I did end up trying them out. I'm in the middle on it. Like I don't hate it, and maybe because when I hear the term Aardvark fries, your mind doesn't really know what that's going to taste like.
I go to Arthur.
So I think maybe I have to try them again just to give it another fair shake. I'll just put it like what was the grade I gave you then? I think I gave it at 6.5, literally like middle of the road. So,
yep.
Okay. Ask me in like 2 weeks and I'll try it again.
Okay. Again, we're going through burning questions. We've gotten some hard hitters so far. If you have burning questions, put them in the chat. We will do our best to go through. Prime time, Jake asks, any chance for retro uniform? Seems like every team is putting something out there for their fans. I will say this.
I would love to see this.
All of the jersey stuff and all of the hype things that have come out by the Chargers lately. I don't know if people have caught the storm is coming stuff, and you've seen some palm trees waving in the wind and all of that. You've seen the light blue. You've seen the white. You've seen the yellow. There has been zero reference to the Navy in any video. You know the Navy's there somewhere. In my opinion, again, I don't know anything, but in my opinion, there is a reason you have not seen any Navy. Let's put it that way. So stay tuned is my guess. There's a question here earlier about safety and corner from Richard. Do you think we'll sign Justin Simmons or Stephon Gilmore? I'm sure they have had talks about this, but not action. It's what we need for the defense. I think with Tony Jefferson, the Justin Simmons thing is probably gone. Unless Justin Simmons takes some crazy deal to come here, and that'd be nuts. But Stephon Gilmore, what do you say?
This is the third time that we've had this conversation, Dan? Now, the interesting part about it is because you bring Tony Jefferson in, who I believe is right around the same age as Stephon Gilmore in terms of what they're bringing to the table. Here's my thought once again on Stephon Gilmore. I understand how good he is. I understand the message that Joe Hortiz put forth in terms of we're never going to stop looking for good cornerbacks. Obviously, he would add a veteran presence to this system that is severely lacking one, considering that Asante Samuel Jr. is literally your longest tenured player that is on this team. But the thing that I think about Gilmore is, and this is the difference, because what would you be bringing in Stephon Gilmore to be? If your expectation is that you'd be bringing him in to be CB1, I just don't think that he's capable of taking on that responsibility. When he was with Dallas, that secondary was already loaded with talent. And essentially, he slotted in as a CB3. And that, I feel like, is something that you can actually put him in a position to succeed on.
Mm-hmm.
The Chargers have
Stephon Gilmore, CB3?
When he was in Dallas, that's essentially what they were already strong at corner when they brought him in. That was just adding strength to strength. So to me, that was the best position for him at this point in his career. I don't know if you could say that for the Chargers now because of how many questions you have in the secondary. If you were bringing Stephon Gilmore in to be your CB1, I don't know how much success that you would actually have with that. Truly, I don't. And not to say that I'm discrediting his talent or what he can bring to a team, but if the Chargers had a stronger secondary unit, I would 100% say that that makes sense to bring him in to strengthen that group even more.
I don't know, man. I was trying to check myself. I went to PFF this past year, and I'm looking at the 2023 grades, and every single one of the colors for defense, run defense, tackling, and coverage are all in green. And that is in over 1,000 snaps. And in fact, the last 3 years in Carolina, Indy, and Dallas, every single year, every one of those categories are all green. So, I mean, I would take it.
I'm not saying it's impossible, nor am I saying it would be a signing that I would be against. My thought process is, Dan, okay, so let's just say you sign him. Are you going to put him on the outside with Asante Samuel Jr.? What are you going to do with Christian Fulton? You're going to move him to the slot?
Christian Fulton and him would be my outside corners.
Okay. So you'd have just a healthy rotation between them.
Yep, and then Asante would be flexed in between there and slot corner. That's been my dream since like April. As soon as the draft ended, I was like, oh no, here we go.
Yeah, I will stand by what I've said for weeks, that the Chargers will add to this cornerback room before the season starts. I believe that. And whether it's through signing like Stephon Gilmore or if it's a signing from a surprise cut from another team, I believe that they will still add to the secondary.
I do too. Breezy B with a $6.99 Canadian dollar, I believe. Brendan Rice's highlights and production is outstanding. A touchdown machine. So what is it about his game that makes him unlikely to make the roster?
Unlikely to make this roster.
So, yeah, I was going to say. So first off, it's going to be tough for him to make the roster. I don't necessarily know if it's because of what his game lacks as much as who's in front of him. Because right now, I would argue we know that there's no way in hell 5 guys are not getting cut ahead of him. So that's already 5. That's DJ Chark, Quentin Johnston, Josh Palmer, Ladd McConkey, and who am I missing? Josh Palmer? Did I say that?
You said that. Are you talking about Cornelius Johnson?
Oh, Darius Davis. Sorry, Darius Davis. So that's 5, right? So the question is, do they keep 6? And Jake, you've said for weeks now.
I think they have to. They have to.
And if they do, and if it was me, Brendan Rice is much more household name. Keep Brendan Rice. Cornelius Johnson probably ends up with the practice squad. You're good to go. That's what I would believe. But if somebody were to ask me what about his game is lacking, I think the initial burst, I think that quickness is probably lacking a bit. You look at maybe some of he's a red zone target for sure, but you also look at the guys ahead of him, like Josh Palmer, DJ Chark are also that. So what does he bring that others on this roster do not bring? That's the question. And so I think this is a long-term play. And again, they got him as a steal, but he was a 7th round pick for a reason. And I'm not going to get caught up in 7th round selections love anymore because I remember the KJ Hills. I remember the Joe Reeds in the 6th round, and KJ Hill was the steal of the draft and made it, 1 year? Generally speaking, 7th round picks on a deep roster, it's hard for them to make the team. So that's how I'll answer it. Another question, $10 donation. Thank you. This is fantastic. We're off to a great morning. My sunburn's feeling good after these. How the Spanos is I'll let you take this one. How the Spanos has finally realized a strong head coach is just as important to a franchise as a strong GM. Seems like every time we get a great head coach, he butt heads with the GM and gets fired.
Took him long enough, didn't it? Took him long enough, didn't it? Yeah, I would say so. As much as we want to give criticism to the Spanos family for virtually anything that's taken place with his team since the days of Marty Schottenheimer, and rightfully so, you got to feel that they finally had enough is enough. And the loss to the Raiders in that Thursday night game may have been the biggest blessing in disguise to throw it in their face. When you have Al Michaels and talking about a video package of the term chargering that is up on a national televised game, that tells you something. And when you go after every single coach, you can make the notion from the Norv Turner days. To me, Norv Turner inherited Marty's team and he took them on a nice playoff run. But the whole feeling of that is that that was probably when the Chargers were the most talented and the deepest that they probably have ever been.
Yep.
In the past 25 years. So they had that biggest advantage going for them. I think that those things that ended up overshadowing whatever coaching decisions that Norv Turner made or whatever blunders AJ Smith ended up making in the latter days of his GM tenure with the Chargers. Then you go through the Mike McCoy era that just did not end up panning out whatsoever. You switch that to the Anthony Lynn era. Different problems, but ultimately ended up yielding the same results. We've talked very much about Brandon Staley and the issues that we felt that were taking place inside that. And I think that was both from a coaching and a front office perspective. I think that there was some things that were seen very differently.
To check it real quick, I think there were front office issues for the past numerous regimes of coaching.
Agreed.
And I think all of that came to a head in the Brandon Staley scheme when you started seeing a rotation needed, injuries plaguing the team, etc.
Agreed. And spoiler alert, because as Dan and I were talking about the different culture shift between Anthony Lynn, Brandon Staley, and now Jim Harbaugh, keep your eyes peeled because we're about to do one for Joe Hortiz and what he has done thus far in the short tenure that he's been here as opposed to previous Chargers GMs. So we'll be talking about this in nauseam, but to answer the question, yes, I feel like they finally have figured it out. It's unfortunate that it took this long and these type of actions to finally hit them in the head to go out and get a coach like this. But the dividends are already paying for themselves, and they have not even taken a snap of football action yet.
DZ asks, do you guys have concerns with the Greg Roman scheme? It seems like his tenure in the NFL has been a roller coaster, and players have been quick to put blame on him for their failures. That last part, players have been quick to put blame on him for their failures. That's new to me. I don't think I've seen that. From what I have seen from previous players currently in the NFL or talking about Greg Roman, people will run through a brick wall for him and love the style that he brings to their teams. But the question still stands. Do you have concerns about his scheme? I don't have concerns about his scheme, mainly because of the folks that are around Greg Roman and because of the quarterback of this team. Put yourself through this, right? Let's role play for a second, Jake. I'm gonna be Jim Harbaugh, and you're gonna be Greg Roman. Okay. Here we go. This is gonna be fun. I'm doing this on the fly. Hey, Greg. We have this top 5 quarterback here, but the running game sucks. What What would you recommend we do to help this team succeed? Should we just run it a bunch and let the quarterback just sit back? Should we just kind of let him reap the rewards of everyone else? How do we do this?
Let's find a balance. Let's reinvest in the offensive line, and let's reload the running back room.
Huh. Why didn't I think of that? There's no way in hell Greg Roman's going to be like, yeah, I'm going to take that crown jewel, that Ferrari, and just park it in the garage and let Gus, Bus, and JK take all of this. It would be stupid. If that were the case, they would have traded him for JJ McCarthy. Honestly. And I know that's insane, but there's no way. And you look at the coaching staff built around him, the passing game coordinator, you look at the receivers coach, Mark Tressman. There's so much brain trust and groupthink, in my opinion, especially under Jim Harbaugh, the way he listens to people. That's important. And, could want to argue maybe if it was just up to Greg Roman, maybe that's what he'd want to do. But it's not. And there are 15 guys on offense on this coaching staff, roughly, that are going to be like, hell no. Do you see who we have back here? So to answer the question, I don't have concerns because of the group around him. Hayden asks, Jake, do you see Quentin Johnston improving to the level of a number 2 or even a number 1?
I think we need to temper the expectations for Quentin Johnston a little bit.
And when? Look, are we talking this year?
I'm assuming he's talking this year. Look, here's what I'll say. The bar has been set so low for Quentin Johnston to get over. I fully expect him to have a much better season this year than his rookie season. It's hard to have any worse or even equal to than that for a number of different reasons. You listen to him talk. He took full responsibility for his rookie season. He's eating the slice of humble pie. He's talking about it. I think his mindset is right for what he wants to do and accomplish this upcoming season. 2, Jim Harbaugh, who is very familiar with Quentin Johnston, given what Quentin Johnston did to him in the playoffs against Michigan just a couple years back, he knows how he is supposed to be utilized. In Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley's system, I think he was utilized extremely poorly. When Mike Williams went down, he was just not ready to go. And even when he was in the game, he wasn't even being targeted. And you could take that for whatever it's worth, whether it's scheme calling it, whether it's rapport with Justin Herbert that just wasn't there at that point in time, whatever it was. Yes, the body drops that were criticism of his leading up to the draft process, those came back to bite him a number of different times throughout the season. I think in how he's going to be utilized in this particular system, and I think from the standpoint that now you do not have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams ahead of you, I think he's going to get a much bigger opportunity to show his value to the team. But he still has to go out there and do it. You heard Joe Hortiz talking him up, a couple months ago when he was spotlighting him. At the end of the day, he still has to go out and perform. So, yes, do I think that all of these things are going to benefit him going into year 2? But he's got to want it. And all the actions that have been taking place thus far in terms of his own attitude and this coaching staff leads me to believe that it's going in that direction. But on Sundays, he definitely needs to show up. So in terms of becoming wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1, I won't go as far as to say that, because when you already have people talking about Ladd McConkey easily become Justin Herbert's favorite target, or even Josh Palmer, considering the fact that he's seen more success in this offense and has that type of relationship already established with Justin Herbert. I won't go as far as to say number 1 or number 2, but in terms of having a much more productive season than his rookie year, yes, I believe that he'll eclipse that.
Justin G, I love your show. I look forward to each new episode. But when you have a special guest like Chris Hayre, you must learn to pronounce his name. It's Hayre, not Harry. I will do my best to work on my pronunciation for you, Justin. We are all not perfect.
Definitely not
noted. Noted, Justin. Thank you. Let's see. We noted the defense. There are a couple questions here on defense, I believe. Someone asked, we just have a competent defense. Yeah, that would be wonderful.
I think we were asking for that last year. If we could just have a middle of the road defense, that this team would have seen much more success. And the football gods couldn't even give us a mediocre defense.
No. And honestly, that's kind of been Sweet Jump says, just give me defense, give us a chance. You've seen the numbers of how lethal Justin is at winning football games when the defense allows less than whatever it was, 22 points or something. It's insane. But he's been having to kind of play in these shootouts and get these last minute heroic touchdowns or game leading drives only to watch his defense crumble at the end of games over and 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 over again. We've all wanted just average. Give me a average defense with Justin Herbert's offense, and this will cook. And I genuinely believe it will be hard for this defense not to be just average with who they have at coaching and on the field. And I know college and the NFL are different, but imagine Michigan with just an average defense. Like that is so that defense was top 3 for 3 years, top 1 this last year. So let's say they take a step back because it's the NFL. Do you think they're going to go back? That scheme's going to go back from being the best in college to awful? And again, it wasn't a 1-year wonder. There's pedigree here, and there's consistency year over year over year with the defense. So I'm bullish on defense. We talked about this when the whole hiring was happening. After Jim Harbaugh, Jesse Minter was the most important hiring until we heard about Ben Herbert. But coaching staff, coordinators, Jesse Minter was the one that we needed, and they got him. A tier had a question. I want to make sure I get to it here. 2 questions from a tier. Dan, Jake, please, I have 2 questions. For week 1, matchup, the first, what matchup are you looking forward to? Alt versus Crosby or Bowers versus DJ? And he's going in the trenches. What is the week 1 matchup that you're most looking forward to?
Yeah, I think you got to go in the trenches. That's a hell of a test for Joe Alt coming right out of the gate. And for someone who was widely thought of that the Chargers weren't going to take at 5 because Joe Alt was specifically playing at left tackle. And why would you transition him over to the right? And we've heard all the reasons. But now you've got some serious beef along the right side of that line. I'm sure Trey Pipkins is going to fill Joe Alt in a number of different ways on what to watch out for, considering Max Crosby is going to be the guy that's going to be lining up right across from him. But yeah, that's a hell of a test. And this is the establishment of what this offseason has all been about, protecting Justin Herbert. This is one of the first things that Jim Harbaugh said when he walked through the door that he wanted to make sure was going to be improved over previous years in the Chargers. So you have to go interior with this. And against one of the best edge rushers in the entire league, that's a hell of a test for Joe Alt right out of the gate. So 100%.
Hayden asks, how confident are you in the interior of the defensive line?
It's really hard to put your finger on this. This is another position that I feel, much like I talked about with the secondary, that could still be added to before the season started. There's a lot of unknowns in the interior of this defensive line. Austin Jackson and Sebastian Joseph-Day are no longer there. You're still bringing back Morgan Fox. Jim Harbaugh has really talked up Scott Matlock early in OTAs thus far. Poona Ford was your biggest free agent acquisition that you brought on the interior defensive line. And admittedly, I've loved Poona Ford since he came out of college. Liked what he did in Seattle. He is definitely not the usual size that you see among guys in the offensive or the defensive line, but he basically plays like low man wins, and he's able to get production out of it. So there's a number of different questions along the defensive interior. But do you feel differently, Dan? Because we can't speak to it. We haven't actually seen it in person. We haven't seen this group in live regular season NFL games yet. But do you get the feeling that Jim Harbaugh is some, especially with Jesse Minter and Mike Elston, that they're going to have this interior, this defensive line, along with the edge group, massively improve this year?
Yeah. I mean, yes.
It's hard
compared to last year? Absolutely.
Yeah, well, hell, the last 2 years. It's hard to be that bad again when you had the same group of guys along the interior over the last 2 years and you saw what those results were. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be the most dominant thing you've ever seen, but like we've been talking about, if you could at least get that group to the middle of the road, that's going to help your edge group out a ton. That's going to help the middle of your field out a ton. So I can't speak on it to say what exactly the expectations of it are going to be, but I'll tell you this. I feel a hell of a lot more confident considering who is coaching this group up.
Agreed. Let's keep these rolling. You guys are bringing great questions. I love this. Let's work for Jake and I. We had some stuff planned, but I'm going to let you guys take the lead until you guys run out of questions. JC asks, do you think the staff is content with the current backfield? Interesting. Or could they look to maybe add a Khalil Herbert, Damian Pierce, if they could be had for cheap? Feels like it really depends on Dobbins' health.
I think that they're plenty good with it. One name that we didn't even brought up is Elijah Dotson. Forget about that. He's essentially the fifth running back that's in the backfield of that room. Yep. Ben Mason's also part of that. As far as he going to be brought in to be the starting fullback of this team, I think they have strengthened this running back room to its extent to have it be the running back by committee system that they want heading into this year. So I would be surprised if they looked to add to this group at all. Again, considering the talent that you are familiar with, the rookie talent that you just drafted, and Isaiah Spiller, who fits this system so well. Anybody that would be brought in right now, I'm not sure what that would basically say. I would say outside of an injury, that would be the only reason I would see anybody being added to this running back group.
Yep, and Hayden brings up a good point. Nobody is guaranteed to stay healthy. So that's probably where this question comes from. But if we're looking at the group, you mentioned like JK variable. I think Gus Edwards, that's probably one that you're relying on to be kind of a bell cow. Kamani Vidal, I think, could do that. At least if there's like a week-to-week thing that he has to carry the load. We talked about Isaiah Spiller being there, Elijah Dotson. The question then becomes, are you wanting to spend more money on the running back room for one of these free agents? I just don't know if that's what they're going to spend their money on. That's the question that I have. I think it's less about the other stuff. Eddie Salazar says, our Bolts are going to have a 5-headed monster. Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Tuli Tupelotu, Bud Dupree, and Morgan Fox. Do you put Morgan Fox in that group?
You can, because he's shown his versatility to do that, but I think that he's going to live in the interior now. You have to, considering that what else is there. That's where you can best utilize his skill set. And hell, Dan, think about this for a second. We saw those type of packages where you have Joey Bosa, Tuli, and Mack on the field at the same time.
That's fine.
Imagine if that's a situation that you also have Morgan Fox in that line. Like, damn. That could be pretty lethal. So I think Morgan Fox's best situation that the defense would want to keep him in is along the interior. But yes, he has some versatility that you could put him out on the outside. But given who's there already at edge group, I think he'll stay on the inside.
Matt Waters says, Alt is a grown man with little boy's face. I see pancakes in Max Crosby's future. Family, trust, respect. I'm with you. Forgotten locale. Interesting question here. How's your confidence in Bozeman at center? I like knowing my offensive line has their keystone. So this is one of the burning questions that I think that Jake and I had going into this is we know how important the offensive line is to, any team, but especially Jim Harbaugh, especially Greg Roman with the running game he needs, especially with protecting Justin Herbert, especially with the lack of run game that the team had. I can go on and on and on, right? Right now, we are all collectively relying on Joe Alt playing on the right side as a rookie to protect your quarterback. You're relying on Trey Pipkins in a position that he hasn't played before at right guard. You're relying on a center who has not played for this team before. You're relying on Zion Johnson, who probably hasn't lived up to his draft selection so far. Not to say he's bad. And you got Rashawn Slater, who's a baller, obviously. But how much of that is stock that you can invest surely in that you've seen do it before? I'm not saying they can't or they won't, and I believe they will. But I'm not sure my confidence level is through the roof. This is going to be a top 5 offensive line at the gate. That just doesn't seem smart business with that amount of variable. And maybe I'm taking the Jake pessimist side here for 2 minutes, but like just thinking about it.
Somebody has to hold that mantle.
That's a lot. That's a lot of new stuff in year one. So what's your confidence level, Jake, in Bozeman or the offensive line in general?
Look, I mean, even after the Chargers signed Bradley Bozeman, it's a 1-year deal. But remember, Dan, throughout the draft process, we were always thinking, it's like, okay, this is Jim Harbaugh is going to continue to reinvest in this offensive line, which is why we talked about potential situations of JPJ being selected. Zach Frazier, who was a personal favorite of mine, I wouldn't have mind seeing him coming into this offensive line. On the off chance, again, Bradley Bozeman signed to a 1-year deal. You don't know how it's going to turn out. You're going to need that center for the next 5 to 10 years. You would like to find that Rashawn Slater of your center group, essentially. Much like you're doing with your bookends that you have Rashawn Slater and Joe Ald now. You're going to need to find that center eventually. I think what gives me a little bit more optimism, again, not flawless. You're not going to get Corey Linsley level play here in my estimate. But from the standpoint that you have a prior relationship between Bradley Bozeman, Greg Roman, that's going to shore up, I think, a lot of things in terms of what it is that you want to run. And considering what your center group had been during the time when Corey Linsley was not in there, I don't see how it could get much worse, honestly. So to Dan's point, no, I don't foresee this to be a top offensive line right out of the gate because you have essentially from the center to the right side of the line, guys in new positions. That's still going to take some time, even though it may be the best 5 that you have coming out of this training camp and preseason. That's still going to take some time to gel. So not top 5, but if you can be that from a serviceable standpoint, again, where you can lean on the run game and make that productive, that's going to open things up for Justin Herbert so much more. So again, I like the Bradley Bozeman on a 1-year deal. I think it's a good value signing, familiarity with Greg Roman, but time's going to tell on that.
I like Bradley Bozeman. And again, like people reference his Carolina year, that Carolina team was bad. And the quarterback took more sacks than like 15 quarterbacks combined, yes. It felt like.
Yes.
So I kind of throw that one out along with DJ Chark too, which we'll get to here in a second. Dan, first time at the beach? The sun is hot, bro. Yes. Okay. So backstory. I had a gnarly farmer's tan. And so the goal was like, okay, I want to get a little color. I want to get like maybe a little burn, but just a little. But I have a toddler and you lose track of time. You're having fun. You're running through the water and all of a sudden you get there at 10:30 and all of a sudden it's like 3:30 and you're like, oh shoot, my shirt's still off. Didn't put sunscreen. Oh no.
I assumed you put sunscreen on Avery. Yes.
Yes. Avery was dolled up.
See, obviously Dan knows his priorities and they're straight, which is good. All he has to remember is that after he applies that sunscreen, he just needs to do some self-care right behind it.
But she takes off the second you're done. She's gone. You're like, hey, I'm out. So anyways, I was trying to get rid of like the white t-shirt I had under the t-shirt. And now the white t-shirt turned into like a red t-shirt. So hopefully the red t-shirt turns into a tan t-shirt and then we're good.
And then a peel t-shirt.
Not the my favorite skits are Key and Peele after this for a bit.
Nice.
Not Matt Waters. Prime Time says dark horse wide receiver DJ Chark. Best quarterback he's ever played with. Yes. Again, this is another one of the players of he can just stay healthy, please, for the love of all things holy. If he can stay healthy, he might be one of the more athletic wide receivers that Justin Herbert's played with, let alone the other way around. No shade to Keenan Allen or Mike Williams. Like, they're both great at what they do. But how many years have Chargers fans and we all talk about this team needing to add speed and explosiveness? Like, that's DJ Chark, if he can stay healthy. So he can do a little bit of that jump ball 50-50 thing. He could stretch the field. He has that sideline wiggle. He has the quick feet. He just has to stay on the field. And so as much as we want to talk about Justin Herbert being the best quarterback that he's played with, in terms of pure athleticism and explosiveness, go the other way around too. People want to say, oh, they had Jalen Guyton or they had T. This is not the same thing. Not even close. And, oh, they have Darius Davis. Darius Davis is fast, but what did you see from him? You think Darius Davis can do what he can do? That's not his primary role. So I like DJ Chark a lot. And there's someone in here before of, if the coaching staff is confident in them, so am I. Let's see. I gotta get back to here. Let's put some respect on Josh Palmer's name, says Ryan Lyon. Jake, you and I have talked about this I think I brought this up when all of the Keenan Allen, Mike Williams stuff was going on, maybe in the days of them both no longer being a Charger. And people are talking about this wide receiver room being the worst in the NFL, which, like, maybe it is, or maybe it was, I should say, prior to the draft and all that stuff. But people are sleeping on Josh Palmer, and they are forgetting how good he is. And yes, he has been plagued by some injuries and some nagging things that have been frustrating, or being stuck behind Keenan Allen and Michael Williams. But Josh Palmer, when called upon, has balled out. And while I don't necessarily think I would like him to be a team's bona fide wide receiver one, if Josh Palmer is your wide receiver two, I think you're doing good. So the question becomes, does this team need a wide receiver one? And I would kind of argue not. I don't think they do. Give them a bunch of 2s, 3s, and 4s. Justin's probably good with that too. And yes, Ryan, he is in his last year, which makes this whole thing more fascinating. Because let's say Josh Palmer goes out there and gets 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns. You know what that costs now in the NFL? That's like $20 million.
Old regime would have been guaranteed to sign him back, though. And not to say that they won't under Joe Hortiz, but you've heard Joe Hortiz in terms of how he's going to operate things. It's no guarantee that Joshua Palmer will be back this year, even if he balls out, which I really hope he does. I think that Joshua Palmer is the most underappreciated Charger. Arguably, you can make an argument for that in terms of what he's bringing to the table. Now, has he had that breakout season yet? No, admittedly, he hasn't. That's because he's been stuck behind Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. But when either one of them has gone down, and when Josh Palmer is healthy, he has stepped up. If there's one thing that Dan and I have learned about being at training camp and listening to Josh Palmer speak, he is a sponge and loves learning from other players. He was attached to Keenan Allen's hip throughout the first 3 years of his career in training camp. If you were there and you watched him go through the ladder drills, it was Keenan Allen, and then next up in line was Josh Palmer. And when you look at him to the naked eye, it would almost look identical when they would be going through the ladder drills. As far as route running next to Keenan Allen, Joshua Palmer was the best. So in moments where they've really needed someone to step up, and even Joshua Palmer being a wide receiver 3 essentially over the last 3 years, I think he's put his head down. He's put in the work. Now, to Dan's point, is he necessarily going to be your wide receiver 1? I'm not sure if it's going to end up being like that statistically, because I think there's only one football, and I think it's going to be spread around to a lot of different individuals, and that's including the running game and the tight ends. But if he could be a serviceable, if he could be the top guy out of a group of number 2s, that to me is getting you where this wide receiver group needs to be and where this offense needs to be. So I definitely think he's going to be up to the challenge. He's going to step up. And as you guys have mentioned, it's a contract year for him. So you definitely know he's going to want to ball out.
Yes. We got about 10 minutes left here. We're going to be stopping at the top of the hour. So get your last minute questions in. We'll try to go rapid fire here to get as many as we can in under the bell here. Jake, over or under Will Dissly 4 receiving touchdowns? Will Dissly. So let's put the line at 3.5.
See, this is tough. And it's not from the standpoint that I don't believe that he could get it. When we have been wanting this tight end group to be utilized in 2 tight end sets when they got into the red zone, whether it was through Kellen Moore's system or Joe Lombardi's system, Jared Cook, Donald Parham, Gerald Everett, we never got that. We never got that type of production that we expected out of that. And now you're talking about Will Dissly, who is the best blocking tight ends that the Chargers have had since Steven Anderson. It's been a minute, but you know what he was brought in for. So it's hard for me to go the over here, because I think if you're telling me that you're getting the Chargers inside the 10, that you're not going to run the ball. And that's where Dissly is going to succeed, and that's what he's going to be responsible for. So I would love it, but I'm going to say the under here.
I am too. All right, let's go quick here. A tier, excuse me. Jake, this is for you, my baby. Let's say the Raiders are in the game in the first half and our secondary is struggling. Do you see Minter calling a different game in the second half? I.e., will he adjust?
I'll say this about whether it's the first game, the 8th game, the last week of the season. Mike Elston, Chargers defensive line coach, has said this on repeat. Jesse Minter is the best situational play caller he has ever gotten a chance to coach with. And Mike Elston has been in the coaching world for over 20 years. Jesse Minter has something, and we've seen it at Michigan, and I fully expect it to roll over to the NFL. He has the ability to do something that the Chargers defense feels like we haven't seen from them in the last 3 years, and that's adapt. Get punched in the mouth, come out in the next half, do something different. Don't just do the same thing. Don't be in the same scheme. I fully believe that whatever situation is going to take place, Jesse Minter is going to find an answer for it. Is it going to be flawless and result in a win every time? No. But I fully expect that you're going to see adjustments from him, whether it's quarter by quarter, half by half, and that's going to play major dividends.
I agree. $5 donation. Thank you. This is a fun one, Jake. Who's the most likely, it's from TD, who's the most likely Chris Dielman or Antonio Gates, or we want to talk about Austin Eckler right now, a UDFA developmental type who comes out of nowhere and be a surprise Pro Bowl talent? And so we've seen some of the names. You got Luke Benson, you've got Carson Barnhart, the guard from Michigan, who I think people are pretty high on, Jalen Gill, Zach Hines. You've got the new fast kid Praise, who just signed to a 3-year deal of a speedy wide receiver from Ohio State in the international program. I might go Zach Hines, just given what I've seen so far from reports at training camp. I think that might be my answer. What would yours be?
See, it's funny. I had 2 at the safety position and 1 at edge, and they were probably my top undrafted free agents. And then the Chargers went out and they signed Tony Jefferson, and then they brought in Bud Dupree, which makes the possibility is that them possibly even making this roster not as good as it maybe once was just a couple of months ago. Akeem Dent, the safety, was the one that I was looking at. I really liked his play style. Be interesting to see if he ends up making this roster. And Tremont Morris Brash out of UCF.
You were big on him.
I was big on him. I'm still big on him. But I think that you may now end up having a log jam at the edge position, considering that you brought in Bud Dupree there. So it may be just a simple matter of numbers that they don't end up making this roster. But those would be two players that I would keep an eye on.
Okay, Jake, let's go rapid fire here. Let's give 1 sentence answers so we can try to get to as many of these as we can. 1 sentence. Kevin Koenig says Palmer's season-long yards line is 599. How do you not hammer the over? I would. 600? Yeah.
The only reason that I wouldn't hammer the over is just because, again, I say one football. Who else is it going to?
In the past, this is from Hanan Derry. In the past, Zion and Trey play the role of dancing bears, not maulers. I will not be surprised if this experiment is not working and they change the lineup to facilitate the run game. Maybe. Again,
you're gonna have to.
I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the offensive line, but that doesn't mean that it's bulletproof right now. Because, like I said, there's a lot of variables that we're waiting on. Will B, Jake, it's for you. Odds that Rumph and Spiller see the field. Let's split this into two. Odds that Rumph sees the field. Percentage.
10%.
Odds that Spiller sees the field.
If he remains on the roster in the regular season, I'll give him slightly at 15%, and I only say that because of Greg Roman's comments that when he talked about running the ball, they're going to have a nice rotation of guys doing it. So they're going to show a different flavor to opposing defenses when they have it. It's not just going to be the Gus and JK show. I think their plan is to get a number of these guys involved.
We all keep saying, this is from Matt Waters, we all keep saying if when healthy. We're such damaged fans. How much change does Ben Herbert bring? Can he help heal our Chargers' souls? I hope. He was brought in to do so and was paid a king's ransom because that's what he's good at. But we're not going to know. We'd like to think so, but already, I mean, this is not to poo-poo Ben Herbert, but there are still people that are going through injuries right now. Nothing serious, so it seems, but, you know, Donald Parham off to the side, Gus Edwards off to the side. Junior Colson had something for a bit. So, like, it's not like it's perfect. But, yeah, that's why he was brought in. Make him harder to break. Fingers crossed. Hines says 6'7" tight end. I'm sure Justin would love to make that work. Yes, that would be Zach Hines. Kevin, this is an interesting part. Kevin says last year, AJ Finley, Dotson, Smart, way too many UDFAs in the roster. A non-serious all-in team. It's a good point. When you have that many UDFAs making the team, what does that say about the roster ahead of them?
Yeah. I don't have an answer. My silence should speak for itself.
Jake, anything else? We went through a ton here. We got about 4 minutes left. Any other burning questions that you have for this team?
If anybody has any more, obviously fire them in the chat. I think if we got into it and say like, okay, what would be the first thing that I'm looking forward to seeing at training camp? It's Junior Colson. It's Junior Colson. Dan, we've talked about this so much since the day that he was drafted. There is arguably not going to be a more vital piece to this defense than Junior Colson. Dan was the guy who put out his statement that was out there in the world that said there is arguably no draft pick that is going to be more important to their team that is a non-quarterback pick than Junior Colson, specifically because of the fact that he's so familiar with Jesse Minter's scheme, more familiar than any other guy on that roster right now. He has the ability to hit the ground running and be so productive and in a tandem with Deion Henley that we've been waiting to see. I'm ready to see him go out there and command it. I know that they're not admitting that he's going to wear the green dot, but I fully expect him to earn it, so to speak. If he hasn't earned it already, they're eventually going to put it on there. I just don't see how you don't.
My burning question, and this is one that I'm just like, we have seen this offense struggle for so long because of primarily one thing. And I know there's a lot of things that it touches, right? But like my burning question is, can we finally get a running game on this team? Because if they don't fix the running game, this whole thing falls apart. The whole thing. All of it. And we're going to see this thing go down in flames real quick. And history says, from the Chargers' perspective, this running game is hard to fix. And Greg Roman's kind of talked about that too. It doesn't happen overnight, and it takes a lot of time. Like, it has been a minute since we have seen an effective, consistent running game. Can we see that? Or how long will it take to see that pay dividends? I think that's what I'm most looking forward to, because that and the defense have been the two things that have kept this team from winning so many football games. And it's so sad to watch and so predictable. It's so predictable. So can this team finally have a running game? We'll see. Jake, this is a Sunday morning for folks here who have not tuned in. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you took part. Please come back for more of these. We try to do these live shows at least a couple times a month. If you have not already done so, please hit that like and subscribe. It does help us out a ton. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Leave comments, engage. We do our best. Jake and I both go into the comments within YouTube, try to reply to everybody. So if you guys have questions, feedback, concerns, all that jazz, we're here for you. Jake, anything else before we get out of here? Enjoy the Monday to be.
I was going to say, like, don't push it too far, Dan. I'm not eager to get to Monday yet. Okay. Let's pump the brakes. Now, everybody enjoy their Sunday. As Dan said, we love live shows, and especially during this period of time where things are down for the football year leading up to training camp. We're going to try to do as many of these as we can. Love interacting with everybody. Love answering you guys' questions. We just love talking football. That's just what we're about. Very simple individuals here on this show. But appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks so much. And looking forward to seeing everybody in the next one.
This has been fun. Thank you all so much for tuning in. For Jake, I'm Dan, Chargers Unleashed, LA Football Network. Enjoy your Sunday, and we'll talk to you next time on Chargers Unleashed.